Hi guys, welcome to ramanujan.math.circle, and today we're gonna do an AMC8 crash course, and we're gonna start by covering a little bit of algebra. So let's begin. So we'll start out by looking into fractions. Fractions are basically the ratio of two numbers, one number divided by another number, basically, and the numerator is the thing on the top. So you have a fraction n over d. The numerator is over here and the denominator is over here. For example, we have 3/4, and what that means is out of 4 parts, you're taking 3 parts. So as you can see on the right, we have a diagram, and what this basically means is you have 4 parts. You take a circle, you divide it into 4 parts like this. And then now you're just going to take out 3. So 1, 2, and 3 parts. So that's 3/4 of the entire circle. And to 4. So that's a fraction. There's no necessary specification whether n is less than d and things like that. But definitely when n is greater than d, there's a special name for it, which is called an improper fraction. And for the matter, a proper fraction would be one where n is less than d. So yeah, so let's look at these diagrams here and talk about what these fractions are. And so what we're gonna do is look at the shaded part and talk about what these fractions are. So first of all, we have, let's count the number of total pieces, parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 total parts. So we put that in the denominator, i.e. d. So we put it on the bottom. So put 8 on the bottom. And then we're going to count how many are shaded. So it's 1, 2, and 3. So putting that on the top. So this is 3/8. So likewise, we can do the rest of them. So I'm going to count first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the shadeds are 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 out of 6. I'm just going to write that. This is similar to the example we did. So that's 3/4. This is also 3/4. And this one is 2/6. If you guys do the counting. And for the last one, let me depict to you what I mean. And green, I guess it's not a best color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1, 2. So it's 2 out of 6. So the shaded divided by the total parts. That's what a fraction is, basically. Converting fractions. So if you saw in the previous slide, we had a fraction 3/6. Now this is not the simplest form. What the simplest form means is that if you can divide n and d by a common factor, by whatever common factor they have, you should get the GCF of the numerator and denominator, n and d, is 1. And I know many of you are going, what is GCF? GCF basically stands for greatest common factor. And what this basically means is you cannot divide n and d by a number k, for example. Both of them by k. You cannot do that and expect to get a whole a integer. The only number of k, only k that will work is k is equal to 1. Only integer. So for example, if we had, and putting this into like example, if we had 3/4, you can only divide 3 and 4 by the number, like whole number, by the number, what is it, 1. If you divide 3 by 2, you get 1.5, and 4 by 2, you get 2, so that's like 1.5 over 2. Yes, this is equivalent, but you're not supposed to do that. You don't generally go into decimals. You try to keep it as much as like whole number over whole number. So the simplest form is when the common factor that you can divide it by is 1. All right, so in that case, let's look at 3/6, for example. Can you just divide, like you can definitely divide by more than 1, right? Because if you divide 3/6 by 3, like on the numerator and denominator, so n is equal to 3, d is equal to 6. If you divide n by 3 and you divide d by 6, d by 3, then you get, remember you have to divide by the same number, you get 1 over 2. And so these are equivalent. So 3/6 is equal to 1 over 2. If we go back to the last slide, let me show to you why this makes sense. So 3/6 is right here. If you cut this right here, I'm gonna box around the 2 portions. This is 1, and the other one is right here. So both of these are equal. So it makes sense. It's half, the shaded portion is half of the entire thing. And so when you simplify it, you get 1/2. Rational numbers are fractions of 2 integers or decimals. So for example, if we have 3.7 over 5.42, that is an ugly way of keeping. You want to avoid decimals and fractions as much as possible. So you're going to end up multiplying the numerator and denominator by 100. Remember, the key rule is to remember to divide and multiply, multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. Because if you don't, then the fraction basically changes its value. And at the beginning, it might seem like difficult to remember because you might just like automatically multiply the entire thing by something, but you need to make sure you keep like constantly remembering to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. And when you do so, you get this is 370 over 542, and this is a rational number. Rational number, all it means is if you have a p over q, or p, you can always represent a certain number by p over q, where p and q are integers. And remember, integers are like -1, or starting negative numbers, 0 and 1, 2, 3, so on. Except q is not equal to 0. So we have that rule because you can't divide by 0. So that's basically the definition of fractions and rational numbers and simplest form of a fraction. Okay, a common denominator. So when you try to compare 2 fractions, you're trying to convert to the same denominator, and the one with the greater numerator is basically larger. So for example, if you're comparing 4/7 and 5/8, which is the example we have that we would multiply 4/7 like this way, and then you get 32 over 56. And then you would multiply 5/8 by 7 over 7, which is equal to 35 over 56. Obviously, 35 over 56 is greater than 32 over 56 because you're taking more parts of the whole. You're taking 35 parts of the whole. And so that means 4/7 is less than 5/8. Pretty straightforward. A useful technique, though, is to understand if you add something, it's kind of like an offset that you're adding. And so if x over y is greater than 1 and z is greater than 0, then we have x over y is greater than x plus z over y plus z. And actually, surprisingly, this can be used for the example that we just did with 4/7. So 4/7 greater than 4 plus 1 over 7 plus 1, and this is equal to 5/8. Sorry. Oh, this won't work because x over y isn't greater than 1. This would use the second rule, sorry, which is if x over y is less than 1, then we have that x over y is less than x plus z over y plus z. So this one works with this, and this one works with this. Okay, I think one thing you definitely want to remember from this slide in particular is this formula, and a more useful one, more common one will probably be this one, because the fractions you'll be getting are most likely going to be less than 1. So I would just remember these two. Okay, fraction operations. So you can add and subtract fractions. So if you have n1 over d1 plus n2 over d2, what you would do is you would try to get a common denominator. So and the easiest way to get a common denominator is to multiply the numerator and denominator by each other's. So the numerator and denominator by the other fraction's denominator. So what I mean is you would do n1 times d2, then d1 times d2, plus n2 times d1, and then d2 times d1. And obviously these two are the same. So when you add them, you get n1 times d2 plus n2 times d1 divided by d2 times d1. And then for subtraction, it's similar. The sign just changes to a negative. Okay. If d1 and d2 have common factors, you can use the LCM. For those of you that are aware of the LCM, you can make use of that. What LCM basically stands for is least common multiple. And all it means is that when you, it basically means the smallest number that divides both numbers. So the LCM of, let's say 7 and 20, maybe not the best number. Let's see, 4 and 6. The smallest number that divides both 4 and 6 is 12. So the LCM is 12. However, if you multiply and use whatever I did here, you'd end up getting 24, and it's a little larger. So you can use the LCM occasionally, but I mean, you won't go wrong if you use this. Multiplication and division is straightforward. Multiplication is just you're just multiplying the numerator and denominator, no difference at all. And dividing, what it means is n1 over d1 divided by n2 over d2. So what you do is you flip the second fraction. So you go n1 over d1 times, times d2 over n2. And then you go n1, then it's just normal multiplication. So yeah, remember you have to flip the second fraction, meaning like the reciprocal of it, which is a more mathematical terminology. Okay, so let's look into an example of fractions. So I'm going to read this out, give you some time to work on it, and then we'll come back and discuss. What is the product of 3/2 times 4/3 times 5/4 times all the way until 2006 over 2005.